Hello everyone, it's Marco Sobrevinas, broker of GTA Home Living, powered by Real Estate Homeward. Autumn 2025, it's a challenge for sellers these days. Inventory is very high. Prices have gone back to about 4 years to 2021 values. For buyers though, the large amount of choice, lowered prices, and dropping interest rates is an advantage. Today, let's go over purchasing costs or closing costs when buying a property in Toronto, Ontario. Of course, the biggest cost will be the property itself. That's obvious. Whether you're paying for the entire amount without a mortgage or a down payment and then the ongoing mortgage, that's the largest component of purchasing. What I'll focus on are all of the additional closing costs that are typically associated with buying in Ontario in the city of Toronto. Here are all the major closing costs you need to be aware of besides the cost of the property itself. Land transfer tax, municipal tax, the real estate lawyer, property insurance, title insurance, appraisal, other costs, municipal admin fees, government registration fees, disbursement fees, PST on CMHC insurance if you have a high ratio mortgage. Let's go over all of that in detail with a projected scenario using the following parameters. Let's choose a residential property in City of Toronto. Let's assume it's a freehold or house, no maintenance fee. Let's assume the price to purchase is $1 million. We'll assume the buyer is not a first-time home buyer, which affects the amount of land transfer tax. As I mentioned previously, the largest part of purchasing or closing costs is obviously the property itself. In our sample scenario, let's assume the buyer is paying 20% down. So that large cost on completion day is the $200,000 down payment and the start of their mortgage. Let's get into the closing costs beyond that by category. Land transfer tax is typically the second largest cost besides the property cost itself on closing day. There are very handy land transfer tax calculators. The one from the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board is very accurate, and the link is in the video description on YouTube. If you buy anywhere in Ontario, you'll need to pay for provincial land transfer tax. If you buy in the City of Toronto, you'll need to pay an additional land transfer tax at the municipal level. This applies only for the City of Toronto when buying in Ontario. In our sample case, we're buying in Toronto for $1 million. Ontario land transfer tax is, in this case, $16,475. Toronto land transfer tax is $16,475. In this case, it's exactly the same. Total land transfer tax, $32,950. After the purchase price, land transfer tax is the biggest cost when buying. I want to emphasize that. Our example scenario is about a buyer who is not purchasing their first home. They bought before. There's a rebate for a first-time home buyer, and in this sample, the total would drop down to $24,475. And you can also see the land transfer tax at the provincial and municipal level are a little bit different. We'll get more into the first-time home buyer rebate in another video in the future. Next up, we have your real estate lawyer's fee. For purchasing, not including title insurance and disbursement fees, you're typically looking at around $1,000 to, let's say, $1,500 before HST. Property insurance is very important to have set up before you take possession on closing day. I would budget, let's say, $500 for property insurance. Another legal expense is title insurance. Expect that to be between, let's say, $400 to $975. If you're getting a mortgage for this property, your lender may or may not charge you for the appraisal fee. That's typically $400. Usually they don't. Other costs. This would typically include municipal admin fees, government registration fee, disbursement fees. Set aside perhaps $1,150 for this. We mentioned this buyer either purchased the property outright or is doing a mortgage with at least 20% down. In either case, CMHC or mortgage insurance isn't required. But if a buyer was doing a high ratio mortgage, less than 20% down, the PST on that insurance cost would be paid upfront. And finally, if you've chosen me as your buyer agent, you do not pay me anything. I'm always paid by the seller. In my representation agreement, I always insert a clause in Schedule A that my commission is per MLS listing. If that's 1%, if that's what the seller is willing to pay, then that's what I get. And you as a buyer don't have to top that up any further. So my cost of services as a buyer agent to you as a buyer is zero. To finish off this video, here's a table of closing costs that we just discussed. You can take a screenshot if you want as a reference. See you next week.